In this week of the Ask the Big podcast, we're going to be answering the question, is there really a $25 to $50 cap on closing gifts? Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Ask the BIC podcast, where you'll hear answers to the most frequently asked questions from North Carolina real estate brokers. Submit your questions via email to askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.
Well, welcome to another week of the Ask the Big podcast. My name is Russ Lockamy. I'm a broker in charge in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And this week's question comes from one of my very own agents at our firm, John. And he asks, is there really a $25 to $50 cap on closing gifts? Is there a $25 to $50? And I've heard this a lot. I remember hearing about it in pre-licensing back in 2007 even. $25 to $50 cap. Is that really a thing? And the answer is no. There is not a $25 to $50 cap on closing gifts. Okay, so if you sell $1 million house and you get a very good commission, and you show up to closing with a $25 gift card to Chili's, I don't think you're going to get that buyer or seller's business again down the road, unless they just really, really like you. I mean, they'd have to love you, right? No, there's not an actual real $25 to $50 closing gift cap. What that comes from is the deductibility. So for tax purposes, you can only deduct up to $25 a year per person. And the reason we say $25 or $50 is because if there's a couple that's purchasing the property together and you give them a gift together, then you can increase that deductible expense up to $50 per year, right? There is like an advertising loophole. So, you'll hear from the cutting board people or the Cutco people, that you can put your logo on the closing gift, and then that changes it from being a closing gift to an advertising expense, and then you can deduct more of it, up to 100%. I'm not a tax professional. Let's just start there, or go back and put the words back into my mouth. I'm not a tax professional. I'm not an attorney. So this is just coaching what I have learned in being in the business for a while and being a broker in charge for a while. But really, the best closing gifts are, ones that mean something, right? And $25 to $50 really, with inflation and everything, that is not going to cut it a lot of times, right? So, and to really, if you're basing your business decisions on rules and tax deductibility, you're really missing the mark. Generosity, that should be the purpose of a gift, is to be generous and to thank your clients who have chosen out of a sea of real estate agents in your area to work with you, right? They picked you. So the closing gift is a time that you can show appreciation of that, right? And it really, though, also on the flip side, it's important. You need to do it, but it should not be the only thing you do, right? The follow-up after the transaction is even more important. So the stats are about 90% of sellers don't use the realtor they use to buy their home to sell their home. And that is just a travesty. And it's because that's most of the time because that buyer's agent, it's not that they didn't do a good job. They may have given an amazing closing gift, right? But they did terrible on the follow-up. So you've got to make sure that you do a great job of follow-up. We actually did a podcast on that kind of a topic either last week or the week before, so check that out. There are, though, a few limitations on closing gifts, and I would not be a good broker in charge if I didn't talk about that just a little bit. So if it's something that is necessary for closing, it needs to be on the closing statement. So let's say that your buyer really loved the home, and in negotiations, like they were like $500 away or something like that, and they just need an extra $500 for closing costs, and you just could not get that from the seller. You need to work on it again. But let's just say you wanted to cut your commission or do a commission rebate or something like that of $500, so something like that. Or something, repairs in negotiation and due diligence period, and you're going to cut your commission to do that. I'm not into a cutting commission. This is not a cutting commission week to talk about that or anything like that. But if you have a scenario where you're doing something like that, that is not a closing gift, right? The buyer needs that in order to close on the home, or the seller needs that. So that is something that has to go on the closing statement. Gifts also, by definition, they cannot come with strings attached, right? So, real estate commission does not allow us to pay unlicensed people, right? So, if you tie strings to a gift, a closing gift, then it starts looking more like a payment for something rather than a gift and an appreciation of something, right? So no strings attached, no ongoing agreements or future expectations. That is a little bit more like for somebody who referred a client to you, right? So, when you're giving gifts or giving things, you just got to make sure, hey, this is a gift. This is just showing appreciation. This is not like an agreement going forward. Hey, every time you give me a referral, I'll give you this or whatever. You can't do anything like that. But giving gifts, being generous, that's a great way to do business. It's a great way to build relationships, and you 100% should do it. And don't worry about the $25, $50 deductible, cap or whatnot. Do it. Just do it. Take that deduction, but you can't base all of your decisions just solely on that. So I hope this answers your question, John. My name is Russ Lockamy with the Ask the Big podcast. And as always, life is short, so take action, but don't take it too seriously. See you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Ask the BIC podcast. To have your question answered on a future episode, email us at askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.